because of our work on behalf of SIVs. And before we talk about what I think and hope everyone was able to watch, it's important to mention that some of our guests have been in this situation. They've been supporting the US troops in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they've resettled here with their families in the US as special immigrant visa holders. And to all those men and their families, and also to the US veterans who are with us here tonight and everywhere, we thank you for your service. A quick introduction before we get started. I want to welcome some new faces. Cress Clippard from Combined Arms in Houston. Cress does tremendous work on behalf of veterans, and he's been very active in his support and advocacy for the former combat interpreters and that served alongside US forces in Afghanistan and Iraq. And also with us, I think there's someone also with you, Cress. Do you want to introduce him?
Yeah, so this is my my buddy Gonzo here. He's a big time volunteer. Whenever we're doing stuff with SIVs, he's out there, whether it's hauling furniture or helping set up computers for people. He's a big time helper. We're both Marines. We both served in Afghanistan, and also it was great to hear him that they served in Sangin, which is where I was. So, all right, we're down in Houston though, Cress and Gonzo.
Nice to meet you. Hey, Gonzo. All right. And then also with us is Kim Staffieri, who is with National Visa Advocacy Coordinator and the founding member of Association of Wartime Allies. And Kim knows the ins and outs of helping SIVs navigate their way through the bureaucratic paperwork that enables them to come to the US. Kim, how many would you say you've assisted?
I don't even know at this point. I honestly don't know. If I tried, I could look back and see all the cases that I've actually got files on. But in our group, there's almost 10,000 people now, and most people just stay in the background and find the answers that they need, a lot for security reasons. And I know I've helped, my team, we've helped people that we don't even realize we're helping. So there's a lot.
It's great work and it's important work. And I wish we could see more of this kind of work. And we've tried to promote the opportunity to volunteers to do this. So we'll talk more about that in the future. I want to get going. We also have Ellen Smith, I think, is with us. Ellen is with Keeping Our Promise in Rochester, and we've been a partner and we've worked with them. Ellen has tirelessly worked and resettled 119 SIV families with her volunteers up there in Rochester. And they seem to not mind the cold weather, but I guess that's because Ellen is so hospitable. Ellen, are you on?
Yes, but there's snow in Afghanistan too.
That's true. So I'd also like to introduce, we're going to hear from Purdy. Chris and Emily, I think Emily is on as well, Cartwright, are both from Veterans for American Ideals and Human Rights First, both a fierce proponent of the SIV program. Chris, would you like to say a few words before we turn this over to the discussion and to Amy and Reshad?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having us here. I also want to say that I am a Rochester native of the great Lake Ontario region, and so happy to see such a strong Rochester presence. I'll keep my accent down, but I tried to get my parents to hop on too. They were unable to join. So anyways, this is a really great opportunity, Kathy, that you've put together and everyone on here. And so Vets for American Ideals, VFAI for short, is a project of Human Rights First, which is a national advocacy organization. We conduct federal and congressional advocacy on behalf of asylum seekers and refugees. And the Veterans Program was started in 2015 specifically to help the special immigrant visa holders as they processed or went through the process, I should say, of exiting Afghanistan, and at that time also Iraq. And we find ourselves in a really unique situation. And, I think a lot of people are going to have some very interesting thoughts on this particular show. I certainly did. But one thing I think we all can agree on is that this show it comes at a unique moment in American history and American Afghan history, because as we approach the May 1st deadline for American withdrawal, there are still 17,000 Afghans, just the applicants, 17,000 applicants waiting to receive word on their visa. That's not including their dependents, of which we estimate there would be about 4. So if you do the math, that's about 70,000 people waiting in Afghanistan for American assistance. These are people who fought and bled and in many cases sacrificed their lives for American soldiers in our 20-year long mission. So I think it's really important that no matter what conversation comes out about the quality of the show, and I think that there's I think it's been really interesting to hear everyone's thoughts, tying this show to real specific action that can save thousands of lives right now is going to be the most important thing going forward. And we at Vets for American Ideals are committed to doing that, and we're excited to see you all here and join us in this fight. And so many familiar faces too, and Cress and Reed and everybody. This is fantastic. So I'll stop and let the show go, but this is great to be here.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for that insight, and you throw out some staggering numbers. All right, I want to turn this over to Amy Robertson and Reshad. And Amy, you can do the introductions from here and have at it.
Sure. I'm Amy Robertson, Program Director at Hearts and Homes for Refugees, and I'm so pleased to be able to introduce Rashed Ahmadi, who is an SIV. We have a couple others in the audience, and I'd love for them to participate as much as they're interested as well. But I was thinking, Rashed, if you could first start out by telling us a little bit, your first impression of this show, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience, arriving, and if this looked anything like your experience.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, and probably good afternoon for everyone. Good to be here among everyone. Many familiar faces, and glad to be between veterans who are really working for Afghan SIVs, especially Cam and everybody and the American. I was so amazed because the writer was really have done a great job. Every detail I was looking for as was mentioned on this. Very first seconds I saw this show was that how I was comparing myself, came here for the first time when we arrived here in Boston. I was also trying to drive slowly as he was driving to see everything, because over there we are coming from all over the other side of the world, and I have been hearing a lot about American and USA. So that was the first impression was resonating to me. That that was the moment. Other than that, I really enjoyed the show. Couple of points I know that was really resonating, and then it was exactly the differences I experienced. First thing was just to start with that is that how we greet men and women. It was interesting. I know a lot of our veterans here have a great respect for them, that they know there's a difference between how we greet our men and women when we meet them. So he directly went to his dad and then start kissing on the cheeks, which is normal. And when how we greet men in Afghanistan, we hug them and then we do a 3 kiss on the cheeks, but we never kiss on the cheeks of women. So it's like opposite. When you came here, the first thing you will see a kind of a different culture, and an impression you will get is that point I noticed, and it was surprising for everyone here probably, but over there it's a normal cultural and religious aspect. I'll be glad to answer any question related to cultural and Afghan, and let's see, I'll be there. Thank you.
Did you think that it was realistic about the bribing and the no stopping at stoplights? Are those things that happen at home?
I can say, unfortunately, I do agree with the concept. Yes, there's a couple of reasons behind that, because I cannot say a lot of things about how the situation was back in Afghanistan, how the rule of law and the governance is so corrupt there because of these warlords being on the power, and many decades of war, civil war, has trained people to just get out of that situation by bribing a few dollars to the policeman who is standing, or the police traffic who is standing all the day long between those dusty roads, to just get rid of that, because there is not such red light or pedestrian lights, but there's always traffic police standing on the road. And then if they find themselves in such a situation, probably the first thing they will reach out is the solution to just bribe some dollars. Yes, it's something, an unfortunate reality. Hopefully it will change soon by the rule of law.
In the chat, Kim is commenting on something that I also was struck by, which, the fact that it's a sitcom, it's a comedy, it's a very light take on a pretty heavy subject. So how did that feel for you, Reshad?
I'm sorry, Amy, I couldn't hear well. You were just breaking.
Sorry about that. That it was a pretty light take on a heavy subject. The fact that they're making jokes about a lot of serious things. How did that make you feel? For myself, it felt a little strange, but how did it come across to you?
It's not that fortunate for everyone. It was the same sense to me as well. While today I was reading about the writer for this sitcom, he was himself experiencing those facts back there. That's why he tries to mention, and then such a big discussion and debate is being made here as a sitcom, as a comic. But it's an unfortunate, because that's why 75 plus people are trying to get out of that war zone country to the safety somewhere that they could really build a future for their kids and themselves, is because the future is not bright. And the fundamental problem is that there hasn't been any rule of law for the past decade. So that's why it is obviously a strange discussion.
I also want to introduce Haroon Ghafouri, who is on this call. He's another SIV who's been resettled in Westchester County. Haroon, do you want to unmute for a minute and say hello? If you could tell us when you arrived, and maybe you could tell us what your welcome was like.
Good evening, everyone. As some of you know, I arrived here last year with my family, and I'm so happy to be here. And I especially thanks to the volunteers. They will help me a lot for the settlement in here, find a job and send the kids to the school. So now we are here and start a new life, and we are so happy and glad to be here. If somebody have any questions, so I can answer. Yeah.
I do have one question for you. In this episode, we saw that he's like surprised by the taste of apples, which I can completely relate, that sometimes the fruits and vegetables here taste different than at home. I'm sure you would say the same. Is there something else that has surprised you, Haroon, about the US when you arrived?
Actually, I didn't saw that episode because I don't have a cable TV. I tried to register myself, but I couldn't be able to watch it.
Okay. So he goes to the grocery store and he takes a bite of the apple and he says, "This doesn't taste like an apple." And I've heard actually Reshad's wife saying the spinach here doesn't taste like a spinach from back home.
It's
um,
difference, yeah. They're right.
are there other aspects besides the fruits and vegetables, something else that surprised you about America once you got here?
When I arrived here, about the kindness of the people, I was surprised, because most of the people said in our country they are not welcoming the Muslim people when we arrive here. But when I arrived here, I saw the opposite side of them. Everyone is kind with us and say welcome and smiley faces, most of them behind the mosque. So that was good experience, yeah.
Reshad, I wanted to go back to you for a second and ask you to go back to the question that I think it was Cress who was raising earlier, the potential, or no, it's Chris, the potential for this to turn into something that people take action. Did you have any impressions about this? Do you think this has a potential for people to understand the concepts better?
I believe, yes. That scene that he was on the grocery store, he said that while you have all these foods, why you're invading countries? So it's a very short dialogue, but it's a huge discussion back there, because it is the insurgents and the warlords and the war perpetrators that they are dispersing this this lie that Americans are invading our country to take all the minerals of Afghanistan and oil, because for the last 30 years nobody has even has used that mines and minerals in Afghanistan, because literally they are telling to the villagers, the people who are living on the urban area and on the rural areas, and they're illiterated, and all they are filling them with this lie is not about independence, peace, and liberty. It's about that these American soldiers or Americans are here because they're invading our country, they're taking out all our richness, our minerals, and the oil. So it was that moment that when he said that all you have this food and richness, why you are invading other countries, it resonated to me that, okay, this was I heard before. And it's a bit discussion, because people should know that from my perspective, it's more than invading a country to take out their minerals and richness. It's about how to introduce democracy and liberty and peace for people, being free of insurgency.
I see Cress.
Cress,
Do you see the Cress question? Okay, good. Sorry.
yeah. Cress, you were going to say something a little bit about the light take on the heavy subject.
Yeah, I mean, that's so when I first saw the trailer this last week, I thought, okay, I'm not really happy with Al's character, because he didn't look very like he was going to be that deep of a character. He kind of reminded me of the guy from That 70s Show, kind of like an older take on, you know, what we like the foreign guy, not very deep. So I was worried about that. But as I watched it, I thought it was a little bit better than I expected. I thought the jokes in here were a little bit funnier. And then, you know, when you see how they, you know, me and Gonzo here, we're both Marines. We, the way they treat the Marine, the Marine's a goofball too, and the character's not super realistic either. And you know, they show these aspects of their character that's like a caricature. This is something that's meant to entertain the masses and people that don't know anything about what we're talking about tonight. And so I think overall, I think this is a good thing, because there's already been very serious takes on the SIV issues. There's the great articles, there's the Vice News specials, there's all these very serious documentaries and shows that have already been out there. Now we've got something that's probably going to be in everyone's household in America this year. And, you know, they slip in a little tiny serious thing every now and then that gets you thinking, but then they entertain you with the silly stuff. And I think the silly stuff is perfectly okay, even if it's not always, you know, it's not always totally PC or totally honoring this fake person out. So I think overall, I hope it's going to be a good year for SIVs, and I think this show is going to be contributing to that.
Amy, sorry, I just wanted to add because I didn't want to forget this point. Thanks for Chris adding to that point. There was one little scene that when he was talking about Kabul, our capital city of Afghanistan, his sister said that Kabul, she thought it's a town or a city, I think in Mexico. That is a little silly dialogue, I think, but it should trigger a bigger discussion because in America, Americans have been involved in Afghan war for almost more than a decade, let's say from 2002. But there's trillions of dollars has been spent on this war. There has been a lot going back on that region. Every American is paying their taxpayers, and everybody is included on that long war. But this question should be triggered and raised in every family, that why we are there, why this war is taking long, why we are expending that much money. Very little tiny country, which is way smaller than Texas, but the cost of the war has been more than the GDP of Texas and a couple of other states. So I think for my perspective, there should be a trigger of discussion that every American should ask this question, why we are there for such a long time and why it is taking, because there's so many things going on that one. It's not just about Afghans and only about keeping Afghans free of Taliban. That's something I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think to your point, Reshad, the show gives the opportunity for people who wouldn't normally be talking about Afghanistan around the dinner table to have a glimpse of an understanding. We also have on this call Fareed Popal, who is another SIV from Afghanistan, resettled in Westchester County. Fareed, do you want to unmute? Can you tell me first also did you have the chance to watch the show? Were you able to access it?
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a good opportunity for me to see some of you guys. I have seen you guys from before, and some faces are new for me. I watched some of that show. It's like a good comedy show, but in real life, the life is not like that. Well, I have spent like 13 years with U.S. forces side by side, and I was working with them. I have worked with the different units, but the thing is that Americans in Afghanistan, they like the country, they like the Afghan culture, the food, and we Afghan also want them there to be with us to solve our long problems that we have from almost 40 decades. Some things are honestly, like they mentioned in the show, they are like that. When I was there, I was asking some of my friends, American friends working with me, about life in America, and they were telling me that it's a good life, but it's not something that you watch in the movies. It has we have a lot of poor people that they're sleeping on the roads, but we also have a good life. We have a lot of opportunities, and people are having more opportunities or a good education system. So this was something in my mind. I was always, when I was coming, before arriving here, I was thinking that I'm going to a country which is very civilized country, and I'm from a very poor country. But I had thoughts like how life will be there, how I can adjust myself with my family and my kids. When I was coming, I was working with a unit that one lady, she came from the United States. She was working with the Defense Ministry, and she had an interview with me, and she said that you applied for SIV, you will be going there. I just want to talk with you and explain some things. Life is quite different from here in the United States. You can't fight with your wife in the United States. This will be a challenging part if you have a fighting with your wife, or you can't bother your kids. This is something like in Afghanistan, people are suffering, most ladies, and they are suffering from these problems. They don't have right. In Afghanistan, ladies have no, they don't have the right, like because of the situation there. So that show was very good. I saw the show. It was very funny show. I liked the character of L. He was so funny.
Thanks, Fareed. Thanks so much for sharing your experience and your thoughts. I know we're at 9:30 now. I do have a question that I'd like to go back to Reshad for, see what you think, and then if anybody else that wants to pipe in with what they thought. The intention of this show was to demonstrate the value, the creators had the idea of demonstrating the value of the SIVs and the way that we haven't fulfilled our commitment to protect them. And, you know, do you think that it came across in this first episode, the value of the role that the SIVs play when they're in Afghanistan, the interpreters and mechanics and logistics officers and everyone else, engineers play?
I think yes, I can say from the first episode that when he was talking about I'm so happy you're here, but he was the Al character was thinking about his family back in Afghanistan, because still they're in Kabul and they're in a war zone. So I think somehow, yes, it should help SIVs or the whole program and that it would help advocates to work more and see that how we can help our SIVs who have served alongside our troops back in Afghanistan. This should definitely help. Listen, unless this discussion is everywhere, it's on national TV right now, and at least every single family of American family is watching this, and this is a good point. Regardless if there's less points being noticed culturally or religious wise, I do. I'm happy, and it's a great start. I can say that, yes, it will definitely help the process.
Before we close, one last comment that I want to make is to point out, Ellen Smith made a comment, I think, in the chat about how many families are still left behind. People aren't, you know, everyone here has relatives that they would like to bring over to safety, and that's another huge issue. So we hope that this program does have the power and the impact to start bringing more attention. This issue, unfortunately, is urgent, and this show is only just beginning, but with the changes that are happening right now in Afghanistan, it's a very urgent issue. So I hope that we can use this to leverage create some action, leverage the show to create some action around bringing more SIVs to safety. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you, Kathy.
Okay,
thanks so much for everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Amy. Gonzo had a question. That's a good question. Did they ever mention SIV in the show? I didn't watch it. I can't say. Anybody notice it?
Well,
Doesn't
I didn't
leave a
notice
lot
it
of
at
hope.
all. Oh,
That
sorry.
that doesn't leave a lot of hope for, presenting this as an issue, a compelling issue, if they're not even mentioning what, naming it. But, okay, my last question to the group, hands raised, will you watch the next episode? Okay, that's good. All right. I'm going to watch the first one in about an hour out here in Nevada. But in the meantime, I want to thank you all for participating and for all that each of you does in your own roles to assist and advocate for refugees and SIVs. Many of you have resettled them here, and you continue to do work to help SIVs and advocate for them while they're in Afghanistan and when possible in Iraq. Hearts and Homes represents a grassroots community in and around Westchester, and I will leave you with this. We promise to continue building advocacy, supporting those men in Afghanistan and Iraq who supported our troops. And we look forward to continued partnerships with VFAI and Cress and Combined Arms and Kim Staffieri and Ellen Smith, and Hearts and Homes will look to forge more partnerships in support of refugees and the SIV program. We will continue to call on President Biden and members of Congress to fulfill our country's commitment to tens of thousands of SIVs who've been waiting in this promised protection. And we look forward to resettling more SIVs and their families with our partners, HIAS and Catholic Charities, so that our new neighbors can rebuild their lives with hope and dignity. We've seen the evidence of that here tonight with some of our friends and new neighbors. And we'll continue to collaborate and build new community sponsor groups like those who've made a difference in the lives of these aspiring Americans. Interfaith Council for New Americans, Neighbors for Refugees, and River Towns for Refugees. And we'll do this because it's the right thing to do for the allies and their families who supported our troops and our country in wartime. And it's about preserving our honor. So I just want to say thank you all. And if you have any feedback, let us know. And I think that's it. Anyone else? All right. Thanks for showing up tonight. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
everyone.
night. Thank
Ciao.
you.
Bye.
Bye.